So as you may have seen, WoW Remix Mists of Pandaria is on the PTR this weekend, and this mode is incredibly fun. I think it's going to be a pretty big hit with the World of Warcraft player base, and I think a big part of that for a lot of people, especially collectors, is going to be the permanent cosmetic rewards you can get from this event. And if you haven't heard anything about this event, you're basically playing through the entirety of the Mists of Pandaria expansion, but you'll be rewarded with a ton of new gear, where you'll have a bunch of these new gems that give a bunch of crazy effects. You'll have basically uncapped progression, just getting ridiculously strong into the end game. But when it pertains to the permanent cosmetic rewards that you'll get on the main retail servers, the main thing you'll really care about is the new currency called bronze. Doing anything in the game will get you bronze, and also any of the gear you're rewarded that you won't be using, you scrap that into even more bronze. And bronze is going to be the thing you use for all of the different vendors that will allow you to get all of the cosmetic or transmog items. And there is a ridiculous amount of items, including a lot of new items to use this bronze on. So I want to go over all of the vendors you'll be buying all of these cosmetics from. And a pretty good place to start is all of the raid sets you'll be able to buy for bronze, because you'll be able to buy every raid set from every different difficulty from every raid in Mists of Pandaria. So that means all the raid finder sets, all of the normal sets, all of the heroic sets, and then also all of the mythic sets from Siege of Orgrimmar, because that's the only raid that technically had a mythic version in Mists of Pandaria. And every single one of these ensembles or sets is going to be 5,000 bronze. Now that may sound like a lot if you've played a little bit of the PTR, but once you get later into the end game, getting this much bronze doesn't actually take that long. So if you're a collector and you want every single one of these sets that you don't have on retail yet, it actually shouldn't be a big deal to specifically get the different raid sets. Now, something that is very interesting with how they're going about these different sets is that first off, you're able to buy every single set on the same character. So no matter who can actually transmog as a set, you'll be able to at least buy them and learn them. Like I'm on a warrior right now, and I could buy this set right here, which is for cloth users. But the second thing that's very interesting is that if you actually look at the item that gives you these sets, it actually says that multiple classes are able to use these sets. So right here, you have the Burning Scroll set. Now this is a mage set, but it says on the item that this appearance is used by mages, priests, and warlocks, which is quite interesting because again, this set was a tier set for mages. So normally no other classes would be able to transmog tier sets from other classes. So I'm not exactly sure how they're going about this, because pretty much all the raids in World of Warcraft also have boss drops that look exactly like the tier set pieces, but they're not actually in the tier set. So other classes could use that as transmog, but this is generally showing the full tier sets. So I'm not actually sure if they're allowing you to fully transmog tier sets from other classes, or if this is just saying this because some of the pieces you could use. Some of these also seem to be bugged right now, so they're not actually giving you every piece they should be, but this could potentially be like the first point in WoW's history where you're able to transmog as other classes tier sets. And like mentioned, this is the tier sets from every single raid, so you have different vendors for all the different difficulties. You have raid finder, you have normal, and then you have heroic and mythic on the same vendor. But that brings us to the rare collections vendor, which will allow you to buy pretty much every obtainable toy from Mists of Pandaria, and these do get quite expensive for some of these toys for some reason. Also, I think the mini mana bomb specifically is something that is not obtainable anymore, so there can also be a few unobtainable items, but for the most part, the items on these vendors are all going to be things that are still obtainable within World of Warcraft, unless they are specifically a recolor of something that was never added into the game previously. So these are just all the toys if you're a toy collector. Some of them are actually kind of useful, like Smite's Compass. This just turns you into Smite, which is a Tauren. So this is a toy I still use basically any time I play the game. But again, some of these toys are ridiculously expensive, getting up to 50,000 bronze, which even later into this event does take quite a lot. So I would be pretty surprised if some of the prices of these items don't change, or if bronze acquisition isn't buffed. And then we have the gem vendor. Now this isn't something that's cosmetic specific, but this is also something you'll be using a lot of bronze on. You'll just be able to buy random gems of all of the different gem versions in this event. Likewise, you have the item item upgrader, which works in a very similar way to item upgrades in retail, but instead of using flight stones and crests, you just use bronze to upgrade gear to some astronomical amounts during the event. And also, if you're somebody that's gonna want to be using a lot of your bronze on cosmetic items, you really don't have to care about item upgrades until super late into the end game once you're like level 60 plus. Usually you'll just be getting gear at higher upgrade levels, at higher item levels, so you don't really need to worry about using your bronze on this until you're trying to optimize if you're trying to do that super late into the event. Then we have one of the most interesting vendors, which is the Beastmaster. Now this guy's going to be selling all of the different mounts of the expansion, but this is one of the areas where you're actually going to be getting a lot of new items because there are recolors of a lot of the mounts you're able to get in Mists of Pandaria. So you have the flying discs in a bunch of different colors, you have one of the kites, you have a bunch of different cranes in all these different colors, and again, a bunch of these mounts are going to be recolors that have not been obtainable in the game at any other point. So these are going to be kind of specific recolors to the event. There's also going to be different versions of a lot of the mounts you can get from, say, raid bosses or a lot of the open world bosses. So you even have things like the Mushan Beast, you have things like the Juggernaut, so recolors from the Siege of Orgrimmar mount, and just bunches of different recolors for all of the different mount types you can get in Mists of Pandaria. But then once you get to the very expensive mounts, you can actually just buy the mounts that are very rare from Mists of Pandaria. So say you have Spawn of Horadin, which is a raid mount. You have Son of Galleon Saddle, which is a very rare drop from the Galleon World boss. Then you even have some of the more sought after mounts like Reigns of the Astral Cloud Serpent, which is like a 1% drop rate raid boss drop. Likewise, you have Reigns of the Heavenly Onyx Cloud Serpent, which is another super sought after mount that a bunch of people will farm for ridiculous amounts of time and still never get. So there's tons of new mounts here that are unique to the event, and then you can just spend a ridiculous amount of bronze to get the very rare drop mounts from Mist that you may have not gotten yet. And then we have a pretty interesting addition, which is the class apparel vendor. Now this allows you to buy recolors of the class specific trading post items. That's a few pieces of armor, so it's not a full armor set, and then a handful of different weapons. It only shows a sword right here, but it is a handful of different weapons, and these are recolors of the trading post items we could get a few months ago. But you are going to need to complete an achievement during the event to actually be able to buy these, and unlike the tier set vendors, you're not able to buy these ensembles for other classes besides the one you're currently playing. Hopefully that is something that's fixed, because it doesn't really make sense that they allow you to buy all of the tier sets for every single class, but then with this vendor you're only able to buy from the class you're currently playing. Presumably this achievement is also gonna be account wide, so once you complete it on one character, you'll be able to go on other characters and buy these without having to recomplete that achievement. So hopefully that's something they changed, but these are pretty cool. And I know it was kind of an issue with these items from the trading post because some of the color of these items didn't actually match. So the weapon would be a different color from the armor. As you can see here, the weapon is actually a different color from this armor piece. And that's because pretty much all of the armor and weapons from the trading post were also mismatched. So if I say go buy both of these, I would now have the weapon that matches the armor from the trading post and the armor from here that matches the weapon from the trading post. So kind of a bit out of a situation, but it is nice that they are adding these recolors here and allowing us to get them pretty easily because they're also not that expensive. And then we have what's probably going to be the most exciting part for a lot of players, because we have some very interesting sets being added at the World Apparel vendor. More specifically, we have the Shadowpan Monastery cosmetic sets, and there's two different colors of these. These are something we've never had obtainable before. Everybody's always wanted to look like the Shadowpan, and now you're going to be able to do that in two different colors. They're actually pretty cheap at 2,500 bronze. Everybody's going to be buying these, especially if you have any character that's a panda. You're just going to want these, and no matter what class you're playing, everybody is going to be able to use these. And then we also have something that's pretty interesting, is recolors of the Korkron Shaman vestments. Now these are a rare drop cosmetic set that you get specifically from trash mobs at one part of the Siege of Orgrimmar raid, and it is a pretty rare drop to get this set. So having a few different recolors is going to be pretty cool. A lot of people are probably going to want these, especially since it's so rare to get the ones from Siege of Orgrimmar itself. And then we just have a bunch of recolors of other cosmetic sets. A lot of these are kind of just like clothing pieces, don't come with helmets or shoulders. And then you also have a bunch of recolors of leveling sets. So a bunch of these also were not obtainable before, as in that they are recolors of leveling sets or of questing sets. So if you like the look of any of the questing sets for Mists of Pandaria, there are a bunch of recolor options here. These ones are also much cheaper than, say, the tier sets, even though these are full armor sets. So if you're someone that just likes collecting as much different items or transmog pieces as you can, this is definitely gonna give you a lot. And then finally, we have a bunch of dungeon sets. So these are just going to be the different sets from all of the different dungeons. There's also going to be a bunch of different recolors for all of these as well. So likewise with the questing sets that had all the different recolors, if you're a collector that just wants as much as you can possibly get, this is also going to give you a lot as well. And these are the same prices as the questing sets. So these are going to be pretty cheap for full sets of armor. And if you like the look of any of these armor pieces, there's definitely going to be an easy way to get full armor sets that look pretty decent for the time. But that's pretty much all of the cosmetic items you're able to buy from all of the different vendors for WoW Remix Mists of Pandaria. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.